Hello and welcome to Further Inside with Chor Leoni. My name is Erick. I am the artistic director of Chor Leoni Men's Choir here in Vancouver, British Columbia. And I am really honored to have with me today someone that I actually know quite well and have been working with for a number of years now as our composer in residence, our first composer in residence. I'd like to welcome to the show Mr. Zachary Wadworth. Hello, Zachary.
Hello, Eric. Thank you so much for having me. Delighted to be here.
It's always just nice to see faces these days. It's a wonderful excuse to connect. So thank you for doing this.
My pleasure.
Tell us a little bit about your bio. How did you get to become a world-renowned composer?
It was in some ways a conventional a path, and in some ways an unconventional path. I got kind of a late start, I guess, to kind of organized music making. Started off singing in choirs, as so many people do in public schools growing up in Richmond, Virginia, just the suburbs of this southern capital. Really just sang in choirs for a long time. And one summer in my early teenage years, my parents were sick of me lolling around with nothing to do and decided it was time to give me a little more structure. And I had been noodling around on the family's piano. I think by that time had picked out how to play in both hands the opening title theme from the television show Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, starring Jane Seymour.
How does that go? I've got to remember it. Yeah.
I would need to revisit it myself. I don't quite recall.
That's an odd choice, but there you go.
Yeah. Don't question your past selves,
No.
I guess. But
for me, it was like the A Team, but that's
that's
story.
much far better. Eventually, I got into the X-Files theme too, but no.
That's a good one.
Yeah, so they signed me up for piano lessons, and I was very hesitant and said, no, it's going to cramp my style. It's really going to ruin me as a musician. But of course, it didn't. And that was really the beginning of things. I took off pretty quickly and really enjoyed playing the piano with my first teacher in Richmond's Suzanne Malcolmus. And then moved on to another teacher, Melissa Marion, who taught at the Virginia Commonwealth University, the university downtown. And we had just an amazing conversation one day where she sort of said, what do you want to do with music? I had started writing some pieces at this point, and she said, what do you want to do with music? And I said, well, maybe be a concert pianist or maybe be a composer. And she sort of said, it's a little late for you to be a concert pianist. Like, you 16, 17-year-old.
Yeah, we would have known by age 10. Yes.
Right. It was actually just a wonderful and amazing conversation. Like, yes, piano can be a part of your life. Yes, this is important, but maybe composition would be something to look into. So I had at that time been composing pieces that were bordering between kind of Jim Brickman level new age piano goop and kind of imitation Mahler, if Mahler had ever written a string quartet.
I am trying to picture what that sounds like, but okay.
It's not great, but anyway, it's a starting place. So I sent off the Mahler string quartet idea to a summer program, the Boston University Tanglewood Institute up in Massachusetts, and for I still don't understand what reason was accepted. And that was really the first time I went to a summer camp when I was 17, I guess, and a summer camp with other serious music kids, and really caught the bug. Was going to Boston Symphony concerts every night all summer, and was hearing amazing new music, and suddenly really kind of had a vision of the path. And so from there applied to and went to the Eastman School of Music for my undergraduate, and just have kept with composing ever since. So it was, it was a path where I think right up until I left for Eastman, it wasn't quite clear, like, is composing something that I'm good enough at to do as a career? Is it,
right.
Is it a viable future for anyone? Which still, who knows? But
that's a different show. Yeah.
But bless them, my parents were willing to support my dream. They didn't pressure me away from it. So that was kind of how I got my start, I guess.
Wow. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with that meme that's gone around. It's like what my parents think I do, what my friends think I do, da 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 da, and what my fans think I do, and then this is what I think I do, and there's different pictures for it. I want to sort of ask that version of that question to you. What are, do you think, the biggest misconceptions about what a composer actually does with his or her days, time, career, etc.?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of that, and it comes in audiences in particular, and in music appreciators, I think, from a place of real love and appreciation for music. Right? They're so blown away by the great works, whatever that means for them, in whatever genre they love, and that love and that awe that they have toward music in general can then cause them to really romanticize the process. I always think of film scenes of composition, which are always so funny. You think of Amadeus or
yes, confutatis.
Yeah, exactly. Where this like unholy voice from the inner soul is just lurching forward in the non-diegetic space. Anyway, it's all.
You have to have longer hair, and it's
exactly. And it just doesn't. It doesn't work like that. I just have to tell people, like, it's. The work of composing is half artistic and half logistical, I think, really. And the logistics come into the questions of, who am I writing for? What did they ask me to do? What are their abilities? What are their favorite things to perform? Where do their strengths lie? Where do their weaknesses lie? And this is for any instrument, any vocal group, any string quartet, any soloist. And like, what can the instrument do? As much as I wish a flute could play, lower than it can, it just can't. And so, unless I get an alto flute or something,
right.
But the constraints of just what works on different instruments and different voices, that's logistical thinking. And so that, on the one hand, I think punctures some of the bubble of what people think composers do. I mean, and getting to my earlier point, I think people really imagine that you go into this fugue state or climb to the mountaintop and kind of receive music. And no, it's really so much, I mean, in my career and in my path, it's been so much about kind of building up craft and also responding intensely to conversations with musicians who I'm composing for, like reacting to their thoughts and doing second edits. And, this idea that the composer just descends with the work and the work is finished is not how it works for me. And I think for a lot of composers. So I think, it's actually much more like a real job than people imagine it to be, in that you interact with your peers and you consider the needs of your peers and of your collaborators.
I couldn't agree more, and I think of it, even what I do, it's more like blacksmithing. Like, there's absolutely, you just have to have your craft, and then you have to show up every day and do that hard work and get sweaty and do all of this. Now, that said, and I think that's really great to demystify some of the process, but there's still gotta be those moments of inspiration, where you do have that feeling of being a little bit of a conduit from something outside of yourself, even if it's just for one brief moment of clarity. And sometimes I think that's like, when you're dealing with a certain project, you finally realize, this is what this project wants to be. Does that resonate with you at all?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm not a huge believer in the muses, for example, or something like this, but I really do think that, with every piece you hear and perform in your entire life, you develop a kind of inner musical instinct. And I think so often my practice of getting in touch with that instinct is to make myself as bored as possible. Like, I really think creativity is a product of boredom. I really do. Because I know the moments that I have the hardest time being creative are when I'm getting alerts on my phone and emails and all of this. And so a big part of my practice of like, I have to be creative today, is to try to empty that day as much as I can, to try to stay away from distractions as much as I can, and to try to the moment I get stuck, take a walk or take a shower or anything that will take me away from the things that are chirping at me in my head. And so I think, emptying out and making myself bored is a way of getting in touch with that kind of instinct, that the freedom to kind of sing through something in my head, sing through a wall that I've run up against, or to kind of consider an option that I hadn't been considering because I was in the weeds, caught somewhere else. So I really think that's usually what I'm trying to tell my students too, is like, I'm sorry, but you just can't compose and be having a text conversation with your group chat at the same time. I just maybe,
Excuse me, yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'll be right back. So I think, I'm always just standing on a rock shouting about how we should all make ourselves bored all the time.
Interesting. And do you have any, like you said, taking a walk and midday showers are like the most creative place for me personally. Are there any other techniques or places that you put yourself so that you can, reset your day or find some of that for yourself?
For me, it's really, it's walking, it's jogging, it's the shower, and it's also sitting at a piano with one of these, with one of these, an actual book of manuscript paper and a pencil, which, I do work a lot directly into the computer these days, but the moment that stops working, to put myself in front of this place where I can just play around and explore and not, not be working in the kind of sanitized grid of music notation software with my email lurking just one click away.
Absolutely.
So in so many ways, also the piano is that place for me. Sometimes I'll leave my phone and my laptop in the car and sit in my office at work with just the piano. So I know that I'm in a room with nothing else to do, really. So I think those are the places for me. Yeah.
I want to ask you, one of the things that's been just truly a gift to me in our relationship of having you as composer in residence is the ability to do, multiple pieces. And I think you've learned about us, we've learned about you, and that the fit of how what you're writing and who we are and what we're trying to do has grown, although you kind of knocked it out of the park with the very first one with the oratorio. So bravo to that. But I'm also wondering that you get the commissions, a conductor or an ensemble approaches you and says, hey, we like your music. Would you write something for us? And usually that ensemble or those artists come to you with they're coming to you with some kind of angle for sure. I know that I have, we need a piece for Remembrance Day. We need a Christmas piece. That definitely takes you down a path. How are you balancing the idea of these sort of made-to-measure couture pieces for these ensembles versus or do you worry about your own sort of personal growth as a composer? How are you, Zachary, getting from this piece to this piece to this piece to this piece and feel like you're having maybe not linear growth, but some growth and learning in that way while still making these pieces that fit the ensemble so well?
Yeah, it's a flattering question, so thank you, but it's also a really vital question. I think of the old saying, and I'm not going to be able to attribute it properly, but don't try to create and analyze at the same time. And I think that's such an easy trap for creative type people to fall into, the grand narrative question. They're trying to be the artist and the artist's biographer in a way at the same time.
Yeah, they're writing the movie script for the film as they're doing. Yeah.
And I get it. I mean, a lot of great artists really did kind of structure their lives in ways. Here's what I'm interested in now. Here's what I'm interested in next. I'm going to turn down this or that project because it doesn't fit with my grand vision of myself. But I don't think it's my job to worry about any of that. And I don't think it's productive in my own career to worry about that. I had wonderful composition teachers all along through my college and grad school experience. But in academic composition, there is a bit of an inward-looking tendency to kind of think, where does my work fit within all the work out there, and where, how am I creating space for myself as an innovator, and carving out, particularly in this idea of innovation, how do I fit into the broad narrative of music moving forward? And I think the only way I could see an artistic place in the world for myself was to just never think that way. That I need to only write pieces that are meaningful to me and to the people who commission them. And that's my only obligation. And that's going to create, in some ways, a meaningful life for me, and hopefully a meaningful body of works that still have some core of my own sound in them because they were written by me. But I've almost never said no to anyone who's approached with a project or a commission, just because you never know. Yeah, and I've had pieces that I was so excited about not turn out as well as I was hoping, and pieces that I was like not 100% on board from the very beginning turn out really magically. And so I think in some ways I like to think of the narrative. The narrative is the collection of people who show up and ask for a piece. Like, they see something in me that they want, and hopefully that's enough. So I think that's how I've tried to square the question. But again, there are great artists who definitely have like the 50-year plan.
Right. But I think that's a relatively recent construct in the world of art. And, what music history and art history tells us. And then we sort of put, as you're kind of saying, put ourselves into that framework. And I just don't think Mozart was thinking along those lines. I think he was like, okay, I got to write something for Sunday while I'm here in Salzburg, or they want this opera, and it's got to be in German, whatever. It's it's again, I think it's all of this is very much more work a day, and the hustle and all the rest of it is at least for me so much a part of this, and Lord knows I think COVID is driving home some of that for me. And when some of these aspects of life that we took for granted and ways that we're reaching out go away, you realize what's still really there. Yeah.
It really has, for so many people, for me, and I think for all of us, really refined our understanding of why we do what we do, because we've been so challenged to think about how we can continue to do what we do.
What are the real important aspects of all of this when you strip away some of the nonsense, maybe.
Right.
You've kind of touched on some of this before, because I think you're already giving some, but you're teaching composition. What are maybe like the 2-3 things that you would have as nuggets of advice for young composers? What are the mistakes that you've made? What are the successes that you find? How do you find fulfillment? What would you say to young folks who are maybe thinking about this as a thing to do with their lives?
It's a great question. And the advice always varies depending on the student's concerns. But I think one huge thing is what I just said about writing music that pleases your own ears, write music that you want to listen to. And that's, of course, different for everyone. Some people want to be listening to electronic dance music. Some people want to be listening to acoustic concert music. Some people want to be listening to glitchy electronica. Like, there are so many different genres and so many different beautiful and experimental and enjoyable and wonderful genres that if you're not writing music that you like to listen to, then ask yourself, why am I doing what I'm doing? But I think then, I tend to default then to the advice that has kind of allowed me to get through some big crisis moments as a composer. There was this moment at the Eastman School of Music where I had spent an entire summer listening to Steve Reich just over and over, like just minimalism, just like, it was very early 2000s. Everything felt very bright and shiny. And I just loved that music. And I remember showing up at my first lesson, I think in my sophomore year, or my second year at at the Eastman School, and my composition teacher, Robert Morris, who actually still teaches there, I told him this, like, I've been trying all summer to compose a piece of music in the style of Steve Reich, and it's just not working and nothing's happening. Why do I just love listening to it if I can't write that way? And he was saying, or he just said to me, he said, "Do you like dogs?" I said, "Yes." And he said, "Do you want to be a dog?" and that I thought, oh, that's,
I love it.
he cured that moment. Right. And I thought that was so powerful. And just stepping back for a moment and saying, you don't have to, as a composer, be everything you like. You can be any mixture of those things or not at all. You can be something completely else. But that was a piece of advice that I occasionally will lean on with students that I think can really help to get through some crises of just feeling like other people think I should be doing this, but I want to be doing something else. It was a really clarifying moment for me, I think, as a composition student.
And I think at least I feel like as I'm getting a little bit older, I can tell when a composer is coming from a very honest place of that. I'm not trying to write in a style. I'm not trying to please you. I'm not trying to do any of this. This is what, when the light comes into me and refracts out of me, this is the color spectrum that you're going to get. Yeah. Versus I'm going to, in Photoshop, change the tints of all of those colors to what I think is going to please you. In terms of that, maybe like the audience and sort of that pleasing other thing, maybe that's another way to look at this. How does that factor into how you're thinking of your music or the projects, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's easy to never talk about the audience in a composition lesson or even in a commission process. I mean, that's of course never happened with us, but I have written a few other pieces where it never really came up, and then you're just, I guess, crossing your fingers. But I think my fixation with writing music that I would want to listen to, at the very least, hopefully means that someone else out there wants to listen to it as well. I don't necessarily always think about pleasing the audience, though, right. Which is, because in a way I also think that's a trap. It's like, what is the audience? The audience is, 50 to 500 people who have completely different sense of musical tastes or musical pasts and musical loves. And the only thing that unites them is that they've walked into the concert or logged on to the live stream or whatever.
Yeah, these days.
Caveat for now. But so I also think that if I try to please everyone in the room, A, that's not possible. And B, I just don't know them well enough and may never know them well enough to do that. And so what I try to do is structure my pieces in such a way that they are understandable to the average listener. One great piece of advice I got from a composition teacher was, if you do something weird, do it twice. That's a great way of...
Poulenc, right there.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly. That's a great way.
It sounds normal to me now.
Yeah, this like splat chord. But it's an aspect of teaching, right? Oh, that's a weird sound, but then, it comes back. Okay, I think I understand it now. Or even hearing it twice helps me to position it as something within the piece. I try to use sounds that have had meaning in earlier musics. So I have, suspensions that could have happened in Bach at times, or I have chord progressions that might evoke a like Poulenc kind of world at times, because they kind of, to me, have proven expressive meaning for people, and you can kind of lean on that as a way of communicating, since of course music isn't a language per se in the direct explicit communication of meaning, but
doesn't mean anything in and of itself. Yeah, exactly.
Right, but it does have rhetoric. I mean, or it can.
And context. Yeah.
Right. And so I think I try at all times to write music that audiences can, at the very least, kind of understand from a mood perspective, from a rhetorical perspective. You know, when is something uplifted? When is something really dark and really stormy or sad? These kinds of moods, I think you can get that in a way that is novel without throwing out all of the gestures of the past, or at least in my own music, I do that.
Yeah. It's I have to just say, it's just been such a joy to work with you over the years, hearing your perspectives on all this. It's fun for me. Like, we haven't usually, you and I explicitly talked about some of these, take a couple steps back from the process and look at all of this. We've kind of got in the garden, got our hands dirty with these pieces. And it's just, it's really, really lovely to hear your thoughts on this. And, I just want to thank you on behalf of Chor Leoni and for myself, just for the beautiful gifts that you've given us during the tenure of your time with us. It's just really been wonderful.
Thank you so much. They are as much a product of all of your creativity and love as they are of mine. And so it's just been really special to be brought into the family and to be given the opportunity to explore so many different moods and stories with you all.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And thank you so much for speaking with us. And we'll see all the rest of you next time when we do another Further Inside. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.